And there have been various components of the partnership, right through from the development of the Ombuds service, the recruitment for the people, through to the training and beyond. So could you just talk us through some of the various steps and where CEDR's been involved at each part of that journey?
I mean, I would say you've been pivotal pretty much from the start. So the idea came out, what does this look like? And I'd got 3 people in my team who we would identified, and we'd said, right, if we're going to build this, you guys can be the leads on it, with me kind of overseeing it. So Estelle, Marco and Wand, we got around the table and said, okay, let's how's this going to look? And we'd started to see, and spoke to other companies to say, what challenge have you faced? Did you get support from, the management level or the senior execs level to start it? Because again, it's that buy-in, that support at that level. Otherwise, you can create something without that level of buy-in, and then you're going to struggle to get it really off the ground, particularly in a big organisation. And Sanofi is 90-something thousand people, so it's a big boat to turn when you're trying to change something. So we said, right, okay, concept like it. Who do we pick? And we didn't want to have people just aligned to ethics and business integrity or P&C, which is the historic perspective on where those kind of skill sets might sit, because it needs to apply for the whole of the organisation. And one of the things that we were, I would say, concerned about, one of the things that we wanted to be clear on was that the Ombuds don't do investigations. And the people that I have currently overseeing the Ombuds office are also investigators within the company. So we wanted to avoid that blurriness of, well, you're an investigator, I'm coming to talk to you about something informally. How do I know you're not going to take this and go and start an investigation? And what are the kind of the parameters that an Ombuds office will work within to resolve an issue versus something that the company needs to identify as a serious risk that we have to manage kind of more formally. So there was a lot of planning out what sits in the remit of an Ombuds versus what sits in the remit of investigations versus what sits in the remit of, say, risk or something else. And that's where you guys came in, CEDR. We sat down with Andy and said, look, what do you see in other companies, and how does an Ombuds office, an internal Ombuds office particularly, how do you see it shaping up? Because that was the bit. It was, okay, there's external, full-time, internal, we were going to struggle to have it full-time. So we said, right, we need a broad spectrum of people. So we thought we need a broad spectrum of people because we've got a really diverse company in terms of people's heritage, in terms of the backgrounds they come from, the experiences they've had in their lives, but also in the company. So we wanted to say, let's have it as broad as possible. So we put an application, job description together, working again with CEDR themselves, and we said, well, okay, we're going to struggle here to just select 20 people. We need to test that they have the right skills, understanding, maturity, experience to do this role successfully. Because there's an element of autonomy about the role itself as well. Even though we have an Ombuds office, the Ombuds themselves, once they get allocated to an inquiry, it's very much for them to manage independently and resolve out with the skills they've now obtained from the training with CEDR. So we went through a recruitment process, put the advert out. We had over 200 applicants, 240 something I think. And we were thinking, right, let's go for about 20. Because that gives us a nice bit of scope. If it takes off well, and it seems to have done so far, even though we've only been live for a month or so, we can spread the work around. We've got a vast pool of people there in different places around the world, different languages, different experiences, different locations, that we can really be truly independent and allow the employees the choice. And that was the other thing we wanted to do. I don't want to have to be told I have to speak to Danny or to whoever. And I'm not an Ombuds. I oversee it, I'm not an Ombuds. So we set it up in a way that they can select, and provided that Ombuds is free and available and has bandwidth, the inquirer, the employee, will get connected to that person, and then it's up to them to discuss the issue and manage it. So the process of training, going back to the point, we've identified our 20 and said, okay, Andy and Susan were heavily involved in the interview process because we had a role play part to that too. Yeah. Because it's quite difficult, as I'm sure you know, right? You try to pick 1 or 2 people or 20 people out of a 45-minute Zoom interview. They're not always coming across in the way that you might like them to, or they don't maybe even present themselves the way you'd like to. So we set up a formal kind of interview, and we said to them, you're going to have some questions, some answers, tell us a bit about yourself, skills, background. And then we had a mini role play as part of that process to kind of gauge what that person's thinking was like, how they saw conflict, how they saw dispute, what their thinking was about how alternative ways could be used to resolve something instead of just escalate. And the feedback we had and the insights from the CEDR team were fantastic. It really helped with us to identify the right 20 people. Yeah. Those 20 were then chosen, and we said, okay, backing again, like I said, right from the Paul Hudson down. So they came here for 3 days intensive training with Andy, Felicity, Tracy, and were given insights to what the role meant, what being an ombuds meant, the types of resolution tactics you could use. And the purpose of that was to give them the understanding and the foundations before they did the second part of the training, which was a 2-day modular training, which was more intensive and more about role playing, being kind of put under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, that's critical, isn't it? You've got that role play, that pressure, because when they're doing this in real life and people are coming to them with serious, complex complaints that might be highly emotional or very much linked to their sense of identity and individual self, they need to be able to be comfortable in those challenging, pressurized situations.
And I think where CEDR really, for me, when I sat and I oversaw the training, I participated and watched it, and where I really learned, and I think the team did, because the feedback we had was fantastic, was that the CEDR team really shared the options. It wasn't about you can go in and fix everyone's problems. Not everything has to be a mediation. There are ways of you being able to talk through an issue with an employee where you empower the employee, give them the options and the solutions that might be available to them, and they can then decide, actually, I'd like to go down that way, or choose this one. And there may be some that end up with mediation. We've said that all the way along. But it's about kind of, here's the menu of options, and there's no one size fits all. Yeah. And that, I think, is where the experience of the group that we selected has really come into play, because when we had the first day here, and it was kind of flip charts, and ideas about what could it be, they really started to kind of open up and think, well, this is way broader than what we even thought. So I think after those 3 days here, they really kind of felt, wow, this is the thing, right? This is not just, oh, let's call some people as an ombuds. Yeah. There is a process here. There is a set of learning to be done, and skills to be taught and enhanced, that will really allow us to be part of a significant team of people that can help drive that cultural transformation in the company going forward.